Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the July 21st, 2020 board meeting to order. This meeting of Sugar Grove Village Board will be held as outlined in Public Act 101-0640, which waives the Open Meetings Act requirement that a physical quorum of elected officials be present to hold a public meeting in the event of a public health disaster declaration and a determination by the village president. Governor Pritzker issued a statewide disaster declaration on June 26, 2020, and in response, President P. Shawn Michaels determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent at this time. So call that meeting to order. With that, Rick Montalto, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Rick. Allison, if you would, do roll call.
Trustee Lundy?
Here.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
Trustee Conan?
Here.
Trustee Montalto?
Here.
Trustee Heron?
Here.
Trustee Walter?
Here.
President Michaels?
Here. Okay. Good to have everyone here. At this time, I'd like to open up a public hearing on the Plano boundary agreement. Oh, excuse me. We have two people in person in the boardroom, a resident and then a gentleman from the Beacon News newspaper. And then it appears that we have two callers online. So, okay. At this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing for the Plano boundary agreement extension. Any comments on the Plano boundary agreement extension? Okay. Call it out one more time. Any comments? Final time. Okay. Close that portion. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the development agreement amendment number 8, Prairie Glen, lot number 102. Any comments on that item? Anybody, any callers or anybody online would like to comment on development agreement amendment number 8? Third and final call. Okay, hearing no one, I'll close that portion. Okay, appointments and presentations, there are none. Any public comments on items scheduled for action? Under tonight's consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes for July 7th, 2020, approval of the vouchers, approval of the treasurer's report, ordinance extending the boundary line agreement with Plano, subject to attorney review, ordinance approving the development agreement amendment number 8 for Prairie Glen, lot number 102, a resolution for street light purchase. And then under discussion items, we have the extraterritorial zoning for 41W 950 Prairie Street, B, extraterritorial zoning 5 South 765 May Lane, and then we'll discuss Blackberry Creek bike, pedestrian bridge, and water system plan. Is there any comments on any of those? Again, we have two callers. Okay.
Sean, we do have public comments from the public comment email.
Okay.
If there are no speakers on the phone or in the audience.
Okay. I'll ask one more time. We have two people on the phone, caller 1, caller 3. Do you have any comments?
Hey, Sean.
Hearing none.
Hey, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Allison, if you would, please read the public comments.
Okay. The first is from Chris Edwards. He writes, to whom it may concern, I have emailed previously expressing my concern about the proposed zoning change and subsequent activity at the Prairie Street property. I would like to amend my original statement to say the following. I have met with the owner and walked the site. The concerns raised in my initial statement have been addressed to my satisfaction. At this point in time, I have no concerns about the future of the property. Excuse me, just okay. The next is from Susan Winchester Finks and James Finks. Dear board members, I would like to comment on the proposal to rezone the property on Prairie Street. As a 22-year homeowner in the Mallard Point subdivision, I strongly oppose this proposal. I do not want to live with the noise of the trucks dumping rocks, backing up to pick up loads, and driving down Prairie all day long. I don't want to live with the dust that will inevitably come with hauling and moving landscaping rock. But most of all, I do not want to smell the smell of giant piles of mulch sitting there day after day. Mulch has a very strong odor in quantities that large. The smell will never go away. It will permeate our subdivision all year round and will be especially bad in the summer when it's humid and the mulch is constantly disturbed. We won't be able to leave our windows open or enjoy our yards. If you doubt that large piles of mulch smell bad, please drive down Rathburn Avenue in Aurora. The surrounding residential area reeks of it all the time. I don't know how people can live there. Please reject this proposal. We do not want this area rezoned and do not want this business literally in our backyard. Thank you very much for your time. The next comments are from Mike and Karen Acosta from Mallard Lane. Dear Village Board, tonight you are being asked to consider a possible rezoning on Prairie Street. I believe that your own paperwork indicates exactly why the rezoning not take place. The following are reasons enough to not change the residential area. Village staff requests the Village Board take into consideration that by supporting the reclassification by the county, the village would be supporting the introduction of commercial uses in an area where none currently exist, nor are contemplated in the village's comprehensive plan. What is perfectly reasonable in the county could be completely inappropriate in Sugar Grove. Bear in mind, the requested county zoning classification, F2, is a commercial industrial classification for a rural setting, not an urban or built-up environment such as what is found in Sugar Grove. Once the property is rezoned, it opens the door for the introduction of other similar commercial uses on adjacent unincorporated property. The use of property on unincorporated lands will have an influence on the future use of property on unincorporated, undeveloped land in the village. Rezoning this property for commercial purposes will lead to the erosion of the sound land planning decisions the village has made to this point. The Village Comprehensive Plan designates the site as single-family residential. Contiguous properties to the east, west, and south are designated as single-family residential, and the properties contiguous to the north are designated open space. The Village of Sugar Grove has plans for single-family development in the area. The land along Prairie Street is trending toward incorporated single-family residential. The rezoning of this property to F2, agricultural-related sales, introduces a commercial land use where none exist and is not consistent with the village's future land use plan. I respectfully submit that you vote your disapproval for such rezoning. Hello, this is Andrew Warren and Adriana Navarro. We live on 326 Mallard Lane. We want to oppose the landscape business on Prairie Road. I have a 2-year-old son who is just starting to learn to ride his bicycle and will be worried of truck traffic through our neighborhood. We moved to Mallard Point because it is a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood and would be disappointed if that changed. Please let us know if there is anything we can do. Thank you. The following is from Blair Peters of Brookhaven Circle. Hello, village officials. I am aware that Sugar Grove is considering a request to change the zoning for the property at 41 West 950 Prairie. I would like to object to the change from residential to commercial use. I have several reasons, along with pointing out previous village decisions, which should guide you as our elected officials. Traffic, types of vehicles. While the petitioner describes the volume of commercial vehicles as low, this does not preclude them from increasing volume over time. Once this variance has been approved, then it is irrelevant what the current plans are. The zoning will stay commercial, even if the property changes hands in the future. A new owner may decide to use the property for a more intensive purpose. Route 47 and Prairie intersection. This corner has been a long-term concern for residents of Mallard Point. The intersection is a blind hill curve where it is very difficult to safely exit the subdivision. The state refuses to add a traffic signal, and the village has not effectively advocated for the residents to encourage the state to make this change. There is no plan for a stoplight when Route 47 is widened in the future. Larger and slower commercial vehicles, potentially with trailers, will attempt to enter 47, and this will increase the danger of the intersection. School bus route. Many school buses travel Prairie, and large lumbering vehicles will make an already challenging road and intersection even more dangerous. Previous decisions made by Sugar Grove due to traffic concerns. The village has a long history of discouraging development that will impact traffic in the village. 3 significant examples are the Menards Distribution Center, Raging Waves, and the recent warehouse development near I-88 and Route 47. Why would the village consider increasing traffic so close to a residential area when the village turned down other developments that would have only impacted larger arteries? Potential sights and smells. Current plans of the petitioner sound relatively tame, but what happens if they change their plans? They might become successful and need to expand. They might have trouble selling enough of the limited stock, so they decide to expand to other products. The zoning classification change does not restrict them to either the type of product stored or the quantity of each product. Again, this type of use is not appropriate this close to a residential area. Options exist. The area around Sugar Grove is very rural, so it is difficult to believe that there are not many other locations that could accommodate this type of use. There are unincorporated areas within miles of this property. I hope that the full village board will deny this petition based on the negative impact on the quality of life for the residents of Mallard Point and other nearby subdivisions. We also have 4 comments regarding the Blackberry Creek Bridge. This is from Derek and Christine Peterson. We are in full support of the bridge over Blackberry Creek in the Windsor Point subdivision. We do not feel comfortable taking our young children out on Bliss Road to get over to the Gilman Trail. When we do go out on Bliss, it is very nerve-wracking and risky. Our family would use the bridge weekly, if not more than once a week. We are also curious why this bridge wouldn't go in a little further down the path after the ponds. This would require no trees to be cut down and no additional path through the woods, potentially lowering the cost of construction. The next is from Ellen Violet Sevla. Hello, I just wanted to reach out and express our support for the proposed bridge project. I have lived in Sugar Grove and the Waterford townhomes for 10 years and have always been so disappointed that we can't safely access the bike path that is so close to us. This bridge would be a huge enhancement to the community to give and safe access to the bike path. I encourage your support of the project. Hello, I moved here 18 years ago. Oh, this is from Susan Evans, I apologize. 18 years ago, excited about the small town and neighborhood. I was particularly excited about the bike path nearby. After all the years of living here and raising my children, we never had the Gilman Trail Bridge that has been promised since I purchased my home. I found my way to the trail via the road, dangerous, or by driving my bike in my car. In addition, my son worked at Splash Country and he rode his bike there, connecting via the road. I worried every day. While my children are grown and moved out, please approve this bridge for other families to enjoy the trail in a safe manner. It's so close, it's silly not to connect the neighborhoods to it. It has also been a big selling point for our homes. We pay a lot in taxes. We should see the benefit in some personal lifestyle ways in addition to infrastructure. Thanks for providing the opportunity to give input. The final comment is from Tim Springer. Hi, I write in support of building a pedestrian bridge over the creek to connect Windsor Point to the Gilman Trail. While it is possible to ride and less conveniently walk along Bliss Road to get to either Bliss Woods or the trail, the amount and speed of traffic makes it dangerous, especially since the wider shoulder apron has not been extended to the trail crossing. Thus, speed, traffic, distracted driving, and a very narrow roadway combine to making it only a matter of time before some cyclist or pedestrian is injured or killed. Please, for safety's sake, approve a bridge over the creek connecting the service road behind the Windsor Point Ponds to the Gilman Trail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Okay, that's completes public comments on items scheduled for action. Joe is here. Would you have anything regarding the airport?
No, I have public comments.
Oh, okay.
This is Joe Wolf. I'd like to make public comment about my actions and words I used at a prior board meeting. I would like to apologize. I was wrong. I should not have said the things I said. I said them in anger. That was wrong. I'd like to apologize to staff. The staff has shown me nothing but friendship, and I returned it with anger and harsh words. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of myself. To the trustees, I would like to apologize. I question their commitment, their integrity, being able to do the job without influence. I know my apology is not much, but I come to apologize. And say, I'm sorry for what I've said, and I hope I can be forgiven in the future. I should not have said what I said. I said it in anger. I had no business coming to the board and speaking in anger and talking the way I did to the board. I have my apologies. I wish I could do more. But I just don't know. I don't know what to say, except.
Well, that's okay. You know, you're an passionate and involved citizen and who served the community in many different capacities for many years. And we just appreciate having you and getting your feedback and you sharing your wisdom. So,
Nobody should question your integrity as you make decisions, and I did. Again, I can't forgive myself. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I had to publicly come and apologize for what I said. So,
Okay. Trustee Heron commented that he appreciates you coming and making comments to the village board. So I think it's universal from the board. We appreciate your commitment to this community. So one blemish, and you can't say it's a blemish. One incident, one happening is not going to change our feelings about the job. So thank you very much for coming. Any other public comments? Okay. Any airport report, Joe?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, may I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please, Allison. Excuse me, is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? I apologize. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Konen?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Allison. Is there any general business, Brent, that we need to address?
Not tonight.
Okay, thank you. Discussion items. Start off the first one with item A, extraterritorial zoning for 41W950 Prairie Street. I believe we have, Walter, why don't you take the lead? We might have the petitions on the Zoom meeting so they can comment as well.
Yes, thanks, Sean. The applicants are on the meeting here, and they can provide more detail and answer specific questions about their proposal. But one thing I want to point out is the applicant has not made an application to the county as of yet. This is part of the process. They're just getting a little ahead of themselves here by approaching the village to get input on their request before they make the application to the county. So to that end, this is an extraterritorial zoning request, so it lies outside the corporate limits. The applicants are requesting reclassification of the property to F2 district in the county, which is essentially a business or industrial type of zoning class, agricultural classification in Kane County. The specific proposal is to establish a small landscape business, landscape material business on the property, retain the current walnut grove that's on the property, as well as the hay field that lies along Prairie Street. The Plan Commission, heard the proposal at their last meeting, and they made a recommendation to you, which is included in the board report, and they generally supported the applicant's request. They've made their recommendation. As far as the specifics about the business and how it's going to be conducted, I'll defer all of those points and questions to the applicant, and they can provide more information in that respect. The staff position on this request is, while the use may seem innocuous in that it is, you could argue that it is consistent with the agricultural nature of the property as well as the immediate environs. There is a whole set of other issues and concerns that the planners have taken into consideration, not the least of which is we would be, support it or not, we would be introducing a commercial use in an area that the comprehensive plan doesn't contemplate commercial uses. So that would be a significant departure from the village's plan. That has some consequence. And if we make zoning decisions that are inconsistent with the land use plan, that has conditions down the road or implications down the road for the village, and none of them good. So we've taken the position that this, in its purest form, the zoning request is inconsistent with the current land use plan of the village, and we're not recommending that we support it in its present form. So with that, I'll I guess with the mayor's permission, turn the floor over to the applicant to describe what their proposal is.
Please, Michael or Tom, if you would, please go ahead.
First and foremost, we really appreciate the opportunity to allow us to present this to you folks tonight. Michael and myself, we live in Ballard Point. We understand all of the arguments that are being presented, and specifically, we designed and thought through a lot of those ahead of time because we live in a subdivision. We understand what it must be like with potential businesses coming to the area. We've been very thorough in not trying to disturb the property, to try to keep its natural integrity that currently is there with 200 plus black walnut trees. We have aspirations of continuing to bring additional black walnut trees to the property, along with bringing either hay or alfalfa, sweet corn, pumpkins in the fall, just trying to keep that farm feel as we've all come accompanied to here in Sugar Grove. Michael has a family, his wife and 4 kids have lived in Sugar Grove now for since 2012. My wife and 3 daughters have lived in Sugar Grove since 2008. We've really become fond of the community. We also, really feel that the community is all about small business, and that's what we're really looking to do is bring a small business to Sugar Grove. I'm going to hand it over to Mike. He's going to kind of go into a little bit more details about the actual operation of the business. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike, there you go.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Can you see the screen now that I'm sharing?
No. Allison might need to do something.
She sent me a request. Let's see here.
Have a technical moment.
Right.
There should be a little, where you have a mic, camera, leave, there should be a little share your screen icon there.
Oh,
okay. How's that?
There you go. There it is, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So what we're proposing with the landscape supply yard is something that closely resembles what is in downtown Geneva. I personally worked with Tom at Geneva there for about 18 years and just recently parted with him on friendly terms to venture off on my own business. And as you can see on the map here, this is a satellite image of the east side of Geneva by Gen Ho, approximately a mile and a half east of the river, where it backs up to the Harrison School, or Street School, Elementary School. The next image, will zoom in a little bit closer on how the lot itself is well contained and it's relatively small. I believe that lot that it sits on in total is approximately a third of an acre. The next image gives a little bit clearer shot on what our intentions are. This establishment has been here for approximately 25 to 26 years with full support of the city within Geneva with minimal congestion with traffic or anything that's going against what the city believes in or their views of a neighborhood-friendly business. You can see, as I mentioned, to the west is Genho Restaurant, right there. Directly across the street, you have a Reginato Italian restaurant. And then directly to the east, one parcel over, you have a single-family home and a Dairy Queen where several people are outside eating ice cream without any type of distraction or health risks to those individuals. Here's a street view of the yard. As you see, those blocks are 2x2 by 6, often considered or called a mafia block within the industry. Those are the blocks that we intend to use to contain and keep the mulch and firewood in neatly fashion. You can see Route 38, the main thoroughway here, with no debris, no residual of mulch running out into the street or excessive amounts of dust. You can see a yard right next door. And then the truck kind of gives you a perspective. That's about 8.5 feet tall where my mouse cursor is in that dump. And if you look directly behind it, that is the height of the mulch piles that you see, the firewood piles and the other mulch pile. They will not exceed 10 feet for an unsightly site along prairie that would disturb that visual of the farm-like feel. Here's Route 38 again, looking north into the elementary school. You have, again, neat, orderly fashion of the materials kept. On the back here, just behind the dump truck, there is a pile about 15 to 20 yards of topsoil that is kept back there in a neat fashion as well. Another visual of the property, and then here's another satellite showing how it's tucked into a quaint neighborhood with this school adjacent to it on the north side. So those are our intentions of not coming in and producing mulch like a resident had concern on Rathborn, where there's mountains of mulch back there where it's being produced. It sits there for approximately 18 months to age, and that's where you'll get the smell. The mulch that's brought in sits literally for a day or two before it's hauled out. It will not be stored there for production of dyeing, grinding, shredding. The full intention there is to supply the residents in town here that I well know that we come all the way out from Geneva to deliver to, and to be able to capture that type of business and keep it within our town to produce and support our city. I don't know if you guys have any other further questions or concerns, or if I can explain myself better. We're not a corporate company coming in to level this ground out and make all this noise and dust and health risks.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mike or Tom?
Oh,
I have a couple.
go ahead, John.
Okay. Just in relatively speaking, how large is the property on Prairie relative to the property in Geneva?
Geneva, you're looking at about a third of an acre. The property on Prairie Street, we're just over 7 acres.
Okay. And I'm just curious because we did get the emails from the residents that were concerned, and the one resident that recanted, but I guess walked the property with you. I'm curious as to what turned them from being, I guess, opposed to now a supporter of the project.
So I walked with Mr. Peterson last night, Chris, and we met him up at the property and walked the grounds with him and showed him here's where the material yard where the mulch and the firewood would be stored. And he was taken back a little bit on how small it was and how many trees are still standing. We have 150 plus black walnut trees standing, and that's our full intentions. And throughout the years, adding saplings to fill in the gaps where the trees have failed to grow. We showed him the equipment that would be used. There's a 324J John Deere loader sitting there on how quiet it is. He saw what our intentions were, and he was felt like he understood us and what we're looking to do, especially being residents of the adjacent subdivision where the concerns are coming from. And he was led to believe that it's a little bit bigger and worse than it was with the documents that he read that were posted.
One of my additional questions would be, with the fact that it sits on 7 acres versus a third an acre, would you be housing more inventory so that there would be less, I guess, wholesale drop-off on the property because you're able to house more inventory? Or do you anticipate that you still have lower inventory levels and therefore you need your distributor to bring in mulch more frequently and therefore raising the concerns of the truck traffic on Prairie?
So to answer the question, we do not intend developing the property larger than the example I gave you in Geneva. That is our intentions, is to maintain that field, to maintain that grove. That is something that we've always, I think we all can agree that we enjoy having along Prairie and that whole feel with mature trees up and down Prairie Street as you head east and having that farm-like feel. Either if you stockpile or if you make the yard bigger, you're going to still have the same number of trucks coming in. So we're just going to keep inventory low. It will reduce the unsightliness. It would reduce the smell or the concern of smells. And frequently or subsequently, we're tying up more money if we have a bigger stockpile of inventory sitting there that's not turning over as quickly.
So with that third of an acre, I'm sorry to everybody that I feel like I'm monopolizing right now. Last question, but with the third of an acre, how often are you turning your inventory, and therefore subsequently how often are we seeing trucks then dropping off more? How often does that happen?
Well, I feel that it's not an apple-to-apple comparison, just because you're comparing a roadway, Route 38, with almost 30,000 cars that pass by a day versus Prairie. I thought the last KDOT report I saw was around 9,000. So my prediction, and from what I feel that we can capture, will be approximately 10 semis throughout a week at a given period. And that's through a 12-week window. March 15th, April 1st is when mulch kicks off, and by July 4th, it's winding down quite a bit to non-existing.
I did say my last question.
And then a comment on that, one other thing is that our main supplier is not going to come from 47. They're actually going to be coming from the east on Prairie. So Mallard Point will never even see those semi-trucks entering or exiting the subject property unless they happen to be, turning out of the subdivision.
I'll have to argue that point with you because I can see your site from my backyard. Anything that pulls in there, I'll be able to see.
If you're in your backyard, then all the time. Yep.
And I'm 4 houses off the corner, so other people will be able to see it too.
You spoke.
Any other questions, Jen?
Well, he spoke about pumpkins and other plants. So are we to understand that this is a firewood and mulch lot, or are you selling other material to residential, whether it be plants or anything else?
So our intentions are to be 90% to 95% firewood and kiln-dried firewood and mulch. We intend to, right in front of where the staging lot is going to be for the mulch and firewood, put a hay wagon for honor system, either pumpkins or sweet corn for sale. We're utilizing that as more of like a loss leader to bring residents in to show them what else we have to offer. But that's going to be a very small amount of what our revenue will be derived from.
Okay.
I had a
All right.
question for Walter regarding this.
Okay, go ahead, Heidi.
Okay. As far as the zoning, so we would be zoning this entire property. We would be saying we were okay with zoning the entire property F2, so that if they decided to expand, they could expand much larger than just that small area, correct?
That's correct. One thing I want to also make clear is in the county, all of the uses in the F2 district are special uses. So in theory, the county can place some requirements and restrictions on the use and the operation of the use on the property. What remains to be seen is exactly what the county will do. If the village has concerns about, expansion or the scale of the operation, I can't predict what the county's going to do concerning that.
Walter, and if I can just interject, for Walter, Laura, though, is it accurate to say if this property would come in, it would be under an annexation agreement, and through the annexation agreement, restrictions, regulations could be negotiated, where in reality it wouldn't be just a pure straight zoning, that they could do everything allowed in whatever land use was there. So, is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective anyway, that if there's a list of uses, if you will, that are acceptable to the board and the community, I'm very confident that that works for the village and works for the petitioner, that we could annex the property in and put the regulations and conditions in place that if any expansion in the future, they would have to come back to the village for that approval.
That's some very good information, because I think it'd be a very different story if it was, I'm looking at the report here, if it was a fertilizer production, suddenly set up there, that would not go over well. So we could put in the restrictions for annexation and be able to control what was there.
Yeah, I mean, the annexation agreement, oversimplifying, but I think fairly accurate, is whatever the two parties are willing to negotiate could be, crafted into the annexation agreement, and that would be the regulations that would be in place for minimally 20 years. That's the term of an annexation agreement, and depending upon how it was written, I think would be, potentially methods to have it extend. Where, as I said, if the petitioner did say, hey, we also want to add this new item, if all of a sudden they said, what, we think fresh flowers are going to be a great thing, but that wasn't on the list, they could come back to the village at any time and ask that that be added.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Heidi?
If I can make a couple of quick comments, if you're done, Heidi.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. I've talked to one of the petitioners a number of times, and I like him. He's a very nice guy. I think he has great intentions with this. But concerns that I have in residents, especially on the first block of Mallard off of Prairie, the houses on this block, there are 5 kids on this block that are 3 years of age or younger. So there's going to be very young kids playing in the front of the houses for the next number of years to come. 4 of the homes on the first block are owned by retirees. 3 of those retirees have homes in other states. And the 4th one, who does not, is thinking about retiring and putting her house up for sale in the next year or two to another state. So the retirees are concerned about property values going down if this goes up, and the other families are concerned about their children in their front yards. Both are very understandable concerns. The issue of the truck traffic, it may be a small operation, but as I was talking to him the other night about it, is that we have unlike the 4-lane with turn lanes, in Geneva on State Street, we've got a 2-lane road here, and they have to get up onto 47. I'm not talking about deliveries. I understand if deliveries are coming from the east, that's fine. But when people pick up stuff, this is not geared toward residential cars pulling in and are not going to load up their car with mulch and stuff. It's going to be trucks. And the trucks are going to have to get out of here. And the closest exit is 47. Landscaping trucks and things that will be picking up this to go to work for the day typically pick this up in the morning, so they've got it to start their projects for the day. And in the morning, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., there is a no left turn onto 47. The trucks will find out very quickly that they can turn onto Mallard, drive through our subdivision, and turn left out the other exit onto 47. So all that morning traffic that would head anywhere to the south is going to be going right through Mallard Point subdivision on the new streets that we just put in. Those are all real concerns. And I think if we could alleviate the truck issue, I think if we had a light at 47 in Prairie, which is not in our future, this would be much easier to swallow. But the issue is it's zoned residential. Everyone that bought here expects it to be residential, single family. And I'm not sure this really fits. I can say that if it's modified and we're not looking at mulch and stone and concrete block and firewood, if you're looking at bushes and trees and the walnut trees and flowers and more of landscaping as opposed to hardscaping, it might be easier for people to swallow because people don't seem to be opposed to that. They seem to be opposed because people can pull in with their cars and get stuff in there. So, perhaps a modified plan would make everybody happy. I don't know. It's just, I'm trying to listen to both sides of the story here, but I'm certainly concerned about truck traffic coming into the neighborhood, and I don't see any way around it given the influence of Prairie and 47.
Well, Rick, I'd like to comment on that. I feel as Mike and I being residents of Mallard Point, we wouldn't want to see that. And being owners of the business, we can respectfully ask those landscapers to not drive through the subdivision. Otherwise, we can deny them service. We have a little bit of control in that regard. I don't think it would be right. I wouldn't want landscaping trucks cutting through at all. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I wish we had an answer. If we had a light at 47 in Prairie, it'd be much easier to swallow, but the state doesn't have that in our future.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Tony is.
I was going to say, I think this goes back to Heidi's concern too, with it being zoned through the county in future on 7 acres like that. It sounds like all 7 acres would be zoned the same, that it prevents the village from really having some restrictions on what goes in. I think that's really where the cuspid of this, not only the truck traffic and the things that you're talking about, Rick, but I think the zoning is too general through the county. And I want to let you know that I'm a huge supporter, as I know the board is, of small business in Sugar Grove and an agricultural kind of business. I mean, that works with the village. I think there's things that can be ironed out, but going through the county and zoning it F2 for future years, this board will be gone, and then it'll be left to other boards and other residents to deal with whatever could potentially come their way. So that's the real concern, I think, at this point.
Can I ask you guys a question that's been on my mind the last couple of weeks too? If you haven't already approached county with this, you want to go through us first. What's all the dirt that's on the property that's been moved around? There's mounds of dirt all around the property there, like truckloads full.
So that's our, over the last couple of weeks, we've been moving it around from the parcel there to see how and where we're putting our pad. And the pad is going, I'm sure if you drove by, you could see the pad where it's, there's a row of trees left on the front end with a berm.
So you've already started working on it before you've approached county or us about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you looked at a site in Sugar Grove that is zoned commercial or closer to a commercial district? Because I think the intent is good, and we, as Jen mentioned, we'd like to encourage small business, but having trucks on residential roads, I'm not even sure what Prairie Street is rated for road weight. If it can accept the semis, Tony?
We get semis down there all the time because of the farm fields. They fill the farm with their crops and come up that way.
And farming's allowed, but other truck use can be restricted or prohibited due to the rating of the street.
Okay.
We would have to follow up and double check that.
Sean, we did, prior to purchasing the property, we did approach Kane County. Walter was at that meeting as well, because we didn't want to move forward and try to put the cart in front of the horse. So we did some due diligence. We had a staff meeting with the county that Walter attended, and that's why we moved forward with purchasing the property and preparing a list of what our aspirations are for the property.
Okay.
Can I ask, because I'm still kind of on the fence with a lot of this, who's going to be running it? Is it both of you or one of you? Or I believe one night we were talking, I could be wrong, but you said you were in the banking business or something?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so are you going to give that up and run this business, or is somebody else going to run it?
No, Mike has the expertise in operating a mulch and firewood yard.
Okay, so Mike will be running it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if, I'm sorry, I have one more question just to clarify. Maybe Brent, you could do this, or Walter can answer. So if we are just saying whether or not we would recommend to the county whether or not we would like the whole thing zoned F2 or not, but the owners have the option of then asking to be annexed into the village, and at that point we could put restrictions on.
I think Brent, I can take it if you'd like. So really right now the options would be the petitioner either can go through the village or go through the county. If they go through the village, then it would be via annexation agreement, as we were. That's where you could put the conditions and kind of go through a lot of these details that were raised this evening. If the petition gets filed in the county, then the village's options would be to either respond and support the project, and they could suggest conditions, but they'd be in no way binding, and the village would have no ongoing enforcement authority. The village could do nothing and see what the county does, or the village could take an opposition position, in which case the county would then trigger a supermajority vote for them, which they could only pass it by a 3/4 vote of the county board if the village files their resolution objecting to the project.
Okay, so what we're looking at now is just for the Kane County option, if they were to go through our opinion on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think additionally, Heidi, I think that the goal would be to get some indication from the board if you felt that there was a compromise, for lack of a better word, where you could where this project, where it would make sense for the petitioners to petition to annex to the village instead of the county. So, to the degree the board's able to, you have somewhat through your conversation so far, but, any direction or indication, I think certainly from a staff perspective, and I would, say with great confidence, if there is going to be something there, we would prefer it to be in the village, not in Kane County, for many of the reasons previously discussed. But if the feeling is that, that it doesn't seem that there's something that's workable, then I would assume the petitioners probably will approach Kane County. And I would, speculate that when the formal application is made there and the village board is asked to make a formal position, from the county, the board would likely oppose it. that would be the one avenue. I think from staff's perspective, our hope would be that, there's enough common ground that we think that we could develop a set of regulations and uses that, the community could support, the board could support, and have them come to the village.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
That would be my desire, is to see this property annexed into the village. I don't think the tax burden to annex to the village is significant, and we could look at some controls. I'm not saying that it'd be based on what controls we put in place, but I would, at this point, object to it staying in the county because of lack of control.
I concur with that.
I'd say the same thing, because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. And if this business gets sold to someone else, does something similar with it, and they decide they want to expand and make it a lot bigger, I would like to have some say over that.
I am concerned about one of the points that Walter brought up about a commercial area being, this being considered a commercial area when it's been shown as residential. So I think that would need to be explored by staff.
I've held my opinion till the last because I'm the most affected by it. But if everyone else seems to think that way, I do too. I think I would rather see us control it than it go through county. I wish these gentlemen all the best, and I hope their business does well. But I would like to see it in the village because it's surrounded by village. And one day it would be us anyway. So I would rather have the controls over it from the get-go than have to deal with the county aspect of it.
Okay. Any further comments on this matter, either by Tom or Mike or any of the board members?
Just appreciate any type of consideration and support from the board and the town.
I second that. Thank you for your time tonight. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Proposal.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, next is, if I may move on to extraterritorial zoning for 5 South 765 May Lane, zoning variation. Again, Walter.
Yeah, this is an odd one because if anybody's ventured down May Lane, this is tucked way in the back off of Bliss Road, and the property, the entire subdivision has an interesting history, to say the least. But on the property is a large building that was an accessory building for a neighboring residential house. The parcels on which the accessory building is located have been conveyed to another individual. Nothing wrong with that. And this individual that purchased the property wants to convert the existing building into a residence, which is, I think we all find laudable. The problem is when it was an accessory building for the principal building that's now on different property, it complied with the zoning requirements in the county. But as a principal building on this lot, it doesn't comply with the requirements of the county. So that's why they need the zoning variation. They're not making the building bigger. They're not moving it. It's just the change of classification of the building from a accessory structure to a principal building necessitated the need for the zoning variation. The Plan Commission heard the presentation, and they determined that there's no reason for the village to take a position on this.
Any comments by the village board back to staff regarding this territorial rezone?
I just had one question. Were there any objections from neighbors or anything with this at the Plan Commission?
Well, there were none at the Plan Commission because we're not holding the public hearing. The county will be.
Okay. All right. Have you heard anything from anybody on this, from the neighbors?
No.
Or okay. All right.
No.
That's fine.
So I'm just curious. So I know it's like a green roof outbuilding. You can see it from the trail.
Mm-hmm.
So that building sits on the two parcels, and then the house that was sold sits on another?
The original house sits on another parcel, yes.
Okay. So they're wanting to basically turn that outbuilding into a single family?
Yes.
And John, it's in the staff report, but it's in the background and history.
Yeah.
They're requesting just a 1.31 feet reduction in the reduced side yard.
Yeah.
So, okay. It's a goofy use. I don't know how this ever was developed in the county, but I guess that has already been decided. So the question before us is, are we going to complain about reduction in the side yard setback by 1.31 feet?
Exactly.
Any comments? Any concerns? Okay. We'll let this one pass or move forward.
All right. I'll let the county know.
Okay. Next is Blackberry Creek Bike Pedestrian Bridge. Tony, you wrote the report. I don't know if you want to take the lead on this.
This is circling back. We're working on the phase one for this project, and we were waiting for IDOT approval of the phase one, and it has now been approved by IDOT. So we've discussed this before, and it brings us to a point on what are next steps and moving forward, and figuring out how to move it forward and applying for a grant. I think Brent has some input also.
Yeah, as Tony said, we're at that phase where the question would be whether or not the next grant should be applied for. I think we previously discussed that there's really only one grant that this appears to be eligible for that provides a level of funding where the local match is manageable. The idea would be to reach out to the partner agencies to make sure that the other three are on board to move forward and apply for the grant. And then the secondary question on this is, the lead agency, from staff's perspective and talking it over with Tony, our hope would be that since the property is owned by the Forest Preserve, the bridge would be built, on their property and owned by them. Hope would be that they would be willing to be the lead agency at this point to, apply for the grant. And if successful, then they would, manage the construction project. The village did take the lead on the feasibility study and phase one engineering. And then we would be asking, in addition to the Forest Preserve, the Park District and Township to continue to be equal partners from a financial viewpoint, where all four agencies would put in, an additional $50,000 each for, the phase two engineering, construction oversight, and construction based on the current budget. So what we're looking for is direction to reach out to the partner agencies and try to keep moving this forward.
I think it's a worthwhile project and would like to see you do that. I think it's a good time to circle back, talk to the different agencies, bring them up to date on where we stand, and talk to the Forest Preserve about taking over the project itself. So, Have they done other projects like this throughout the county? Tony?
I'd look either Tony and Michelle would have more knowledge probably on the types of projects, they've done, bike bridge type things, but I can't say that I know specifically which ones. I mean, the Virgil Gilman Trail over Galena, I don't know who the lead agency was on that one. Tony or Michelle, do either of you have knowledge on the Forest Preserve's lead on these type of projects?
I don't know specifically without further research on the 56 bridge project or the Galena bridge project for the Virgil Gilman. We would have to find out what other similar projects that the Forest Preserve has taken.
Okay, but that would be part of this next step.
I have a kind of simple question that goes in with the public comment that was made this evening regarding the cost associated with it. And I'm not familiar, I don't go on the trails back there, but the line that's marked Village of Sugar Grove existing trail route with purple, if there's a way that you just connect, it looks like you're bringing the yellow line, the new path, all the way into, I can't see the map, what street that is, but is it not feasible to connect it halfway just to the Village of Sugar Grove existing trail path and reduce the cost of the project, and then maybe it would be eligible for additional grants beyond just the, it's listed almost $1 million project, and reducing that and maybe potentially getting somewhere with it.
I'll field that one if that's okay. You can speak up and correct me, Tony, but the bulk of the money is in the bridge structure. So yes, you can reduce it down. Yes, it could be reduced down if that's what was intended, but the bulk of that funding is really with the bridge structure.
Okay.
Michelle, that's something maybe as you talk to the different governmental bodies to talk about the bridge structure, maybe to see what the consensus is from our partners as to how we move forward. Because $1 million does seem like a lot, and if there's a way to cut it significantly without making it obsolete, I don't think this is going to be a bridge that'll have a lot of traffic where you have people coming and going. So if possible to narrow it down to reduce costs, but maybe, we're penny wise and pound foolish. So I'd look to what you say and what other users and partners would say.
We used the typical bridge spec that the Forest Preserve does use, since this is on their property. And all going back to Jen's comment, to connect to the street there, part of what you're trying to do is make it accessible from a neighborhood, so it is better into a street with a little bit of parking there to make it a better fit for the area. To get to that purple trail, which is kind of a gravel type trail there, is kind of around the back to get there.
Yeah, I know
Can
that.
you get though from a road?
No, the purple thing is just an access gravel trail, and to get to that, you have to walk through like Bellevue Park, which is all one big open grass field.
Okay.
There is no other real easy way to get there.
Okay.
I'm assuming that path, the yellow path, would be a paved path.
Michelle, would you be able to answer that?
You're on mute, I think, Michelle.
I would just have to double check to make sure. It's been a while since I've looked at that specific section, and I can certainly look it up and let you know. We contemplated both.
I do believe it is paved. I do believe so.
Yeah, I believe it as well.
Well, an additional question with that, the area from the Hannaford Farm parking lot there at the Forest Preserve is like that crushed pea gravel all the way down until it connects with Wabansie. So I'm not quite sure, and there's bikers on that all the time, why it would need to be paved. I would just assume that increased the cost of the project versus something that's less expensive, but then hopefully we can get the project done.
Look at the individual costs for the material, but cost still does remain in the bridge and getting over the creek and clearing the way there. But yeah, we can get the individual breakdown and see if there's a significant savings in the material.
Okay. All right. So I think we have a consensus to reach out to the other taxing bodies and keep this moving along.
I agree.
Agree.
Okay. All right. Water system planning.
Michelle is going to take this one. She has a couple slides to go over. And,
So can everybody hear me? So I apologize for not being here at the last meeting, but the whole intent of this presentation is to kind of say where have we been over the last, 15 to 20 years in terms of water system planning, just a very high level overview to tell you where we're at today. So first, we start with who are we serving? And the village serves obviously their own residents and their restaurants and their commercial and industrial. And that equates to about 10,000 residents in addition to the restaurants and commercial and industrial. And then they serve Pressberry, which is unincorporated. There's about 1,700. So all in all, we're serving about 11,610 people. So that being said, what does that equate to in water use? So how we size all of our facilities, figure out, how many wells do we need to drill? How much storage do we need to have? It really relates back to these key parameters. One is average day. So in this case, Village of Sugar Grove in 2019 did about 740,000 gallons per day, or 0.74 million gallons per day. The maximum day is 1.57 million gallons per day. And then the ratio of maximum day to average day, so that's just your maximum day divided by your average day, is 2.11. For established communities, you often see around 2. There are fluctuations. So Sugar Grove's in the ballpark. I will say that used to be significantly higher back in the early 2000s when a lot of development was occurring. But given things are a little bit more stable now, we've seen that go down quite a bit. And what that equates to is per person, about 64 gallons per day is used by every person in Sugar Grove. So now that we've talked about the population that's being served, how do we serve it? And when we say how do we serve it, what it really entails is your source of supply, your storage, and your distribution system. So from a supply source, Village is fortunate they have shallow wells and deep wells, so different level aquifers that you can draw from. Shallow wells, there's 3 and 7. Unfortunately, no treatment is associated with, or treatment plants associated, and it's hard water. So, and then you have the deep wells, 8, 9, 10, and 11, which are the primary wells and really what serves the village on the average day. There are other wells that can be used for emergency purposes, wells 4 and 5. And then from a storage perspective, you have the New Bond Road tank, which is up near the Pressberry area. You have the Village Center tank, which is in the main part of town. And then you have that Arbor Avenue ground storage tank that serves the village. So all in all, now that we understand the basic components, just give you a little bit of the history. So back in 2005, we did a master plan. At that time, there was a lot of development occurring all over town. You can see in this map, you know, we took the expanded boundaries and we said, okay, from an existing standpoint, where are my deficiencies? And then let's add in all the development that was being talked about at the time, and see what that looks like and what the needs are for that immediate development. And then let's look system-wide so we don't forget anything and make sure we got our water mains running in the right direction on the right roads, et cetera, in case a development comes in. It's our plan. So someone comes in, they know where to put that water main. So you see all the items highlighted in yellow. I'll go back here. In terms of the existing system and what was being proposed, those highlighted yellow segments were key connections that we said to develop redundancy, get the amount of fire flow you really want. These are key areas. Of course, you have to loop mains once you do your once a development comes in, but really for your larger diameter mains, carry the water through. These are really your key locations, and they were all established. We have a water model that was completed as part of this, and that's how we designed and said these are the sizes they needed to be. But you can see one thing this map doesn't show, in addition to these main improvements, the other recommendation I should mention is in the older parts of town, where you see the Village Center tank, all in this older part of town, you're talking mains that are 60 plus years old. So those mains are doing great, doing fine, but something to keep your eye on. So, and they're smaller. Like right now, if you go to put in a water main, it would be about 8 inches, whereas in the center part of town, which was very common when this was installed, was more like 4 or 6 inches. So it's just an area to think about as you start preparing your capital improvement projects, et cetera, in future if you start seeing more water main breaks. So that being said, we have all the main improvements shown here. So it's kind of interesting because this was back in 2005. So here we are 15 years later. So what have we done? And I think what's hatched here, what's shown in the red hatches is I have to commend staff and the village board on being proactive and actually working towards these main connections to really strengthen the system. And, you know, it's the little things that I think a lot of residents don't realize what goes into it. But this is really, if you have a main break in one area, you can still keep that water going if you have a loop. So looping and that sort of thing is key, and really have come a long way in that regard.
Excuse me, sorry. So everything that's hatched out was on the 2005 plan, and since that time, the village has installed at different times in different parts. Obviously, you remember we just more recently did the Settlers Ridge to Pressberry part, is shown here as 1A and 1B. So that's showing what we've accomplished so far at this point from the 2005 plan.
So once again, commend staff and the board in being proactive in that regard. So that brings us, you know, up to that 2019 kind of time frame, 2018, and that's when Crown came in. if you notice, and you guys were aware that we were, when that property was being discussed, there was, how do we serve the property? And it got pretty complex because the grades in that area changed. So you can see the pink area and the tannish area. So this pink area and then this tannish area, they're called different pressure zones. And what that means is the grade changes enough that it causes you to have some more pumps, a little more mechanical to make those systems operate. The exact point at which we needed those pumps, etc., it could depending on how the property's graded. So it was a very iterative process, and we came up, this was one solution that we had generally talked about. We have always had a tank up in this area based on the 2005. So we were just solidifying where we'd want that tank, etc. So along with that, as part of that, as I mentioned, you have the village of Sugar Grove is fortunate that you have shallow wells and deep wells across the northeastern Illinois. You hear some shortages in the well supplies, etc., and those come from really your deep aquifers. Your deep aquifer is what they're referring to. Not everybody has access to the shallow aquifer. So when Crown came in, this is a map basically showing where that shallow aquifer lies. So blue is good, pink is really, really good. So you can see Wabanzi is very fortunate with that pink area, and they have a great well-producing well there. But we knew that there was an opportunity up with Crown for some shallow groundwater, so that was one of the discussions we are having. This is why you do that planning we did back in 2005 and why you periodically update it, so you know to go in and look for this stuff and have that discussion with whoever comes in. So, because you want to reserve that capability of the village, it diversifies your wells. So with that, that's really where we're at. There was no solidified plan with Crown at the time, and we were exploring options, and this is where we're at now. I'll take any questions.
I know on our planning horizon for the, I think, 3-year budget, we're talking about looping water main or replacing some water main in Dugan Woods. Is there any other prominent or pertinent projects that we should be considering for the next 5 years to consider as far as improvements into the water system?
I think the Dugan Woods, I know talking with Brad is certainly on the eye. I would say I'd probably like to have that discussion with staff about some issues maybe they'd be having around town before we made that recommendation. But I think we're at a time now where we need to start thinking about some of our older water mains. And if we start seeing some water main breaks, etc., it might be a time to move forward with some of that. But in addition to that, we haven't done a full complete study and modeled, etc., to identify the next weakest link, shall we say. That's a study in and of itself, but Village has made great headway here. So
one more question for me is, do we have any lead services or lead pipes that we need to be concerned about as you read about other communities?
I can defer to Tony, but I don't believe so in my discussions with Brad. Brad's on the phone too, if you know otherwise, Brad, but I'm not aware of any.
The village does not have any lead services in its system.
Michelle, can you speak to water capacity and how much excess at this point the village has? And so when we look at developments all over town, whether it be Crown's property or something on the south side, that we go in initially and provide water for, what are we able to provide? How much extra water can we really spare at this point?
Sure. And that, it's a very loaded question. Water capacity, it often relates to how much water you can supply, how much water you can treat, how much water you have in storage, and then your distribution. Can you get it there? So that number, you know, from a supply and storage perspective, we have some capacity in the system, but that was designed as such because you want to be able to let new development in. You know, if a commercial building comes in, you don't want to go build a storage tank. You know, it gets a little more challenging. So there is capacity depending on where you're at within the village, and that's where some water modeling goes into play, et cetera, to see if we can get that water to where it needs to go. So unfortunately, it's not just a straightforward answer. It really depends on the location and getting the water to where we need to be. Yeah. You know, up north, you probably have 500 to 1,000 gallons per minute that you could get there, but it depends. What does that mean? Maximum day, average day, peak hour. There's a lot of different factors in how they're going to use the water. It's just not a straightforward question.
Okay.
Okay. If we could maybe get this handout that's shown, which shows the projects that have been accomplished and then ones that we do need to consider. I think that would be a good handout for us to have for future reference.
Sure, we can work with staff and get that.
Okay, and I know as budgets come and go, we look to see what funds we have available and look to staff to make recommendations for projects that we should undertake. So it's good to have this review. It is amazing the amount of water improvements we've done in the last 15 years. And I've been involved with public works since I first moved to the village in 91, and can remember all the problems we had with sand getting into the pumps and people helping out, residents helping out instead of going to Lane Christensen. So it's been neat to see it evolve over all these years.
I should say you've had some very challenging projects as well. Going across railroads, tracks, and creeks, and I mean, these were intense projects. So.
And I think at one time the city of Aurora was going to mandate that we put up a water tower just for the airport because we had committed to supplying them with water and had to provide 3,000 gallons a minute for 3 hours or whatever the fire flow requirements were. And, you know, that was going to be expensive and really no benefits. And then through modeling, and I think it was EEI back in the day, they determined if we connected the two systems, the north and south, the Pressberry system as it was called, and the Sugar Grove, the tank by the railroad tracks, that we would be able to meet that water flow and actually get a benefit out of it by having moving water, having the excess capacity. So that allowed some development to take place. And then, back in 95, I can remember Kathleen Petrick, who lived in Windstone, which was just a brand new subdivision. She'd bring in a mason jar of rusty water, and she'd say, "This is what's coming out of her tap." And we'd give her bleach tablets or CLR. And it was bad. You would not believe it was drinkable water. But you know, you think back to those times to where we've come. It's pretty amazing. And you know, even more recent, fixing the dead ends in Pressberry and some of the neighborhoods so that we don't have those rust problems. That used to be a frequent complaint up to probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it's nice when we can address people's concerns, and then people move on, and you don't hear about it, and maybe that's the best compliment of all. We don't get complaints, so that's good.
Yep.
Is there any other questions for staff or Michelle? Well, and Michelle, no apologies necessary. We're sorry that your mom passed, and our condolences.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that water system planning report. Moving on, questions for staff?
Yes, I've got a couple quick ones for Walter. I know we've been communicating back and forth this past week or two about a couple of issues in Mallard Point. The one lady at 369 that you said you couldn't or staff could not get a hold of, have they made contact with her yet, or?
I don't know. I haven't talked to Rhonda to get an update.
Okay. And I believe the house that was at on the corner of Brookhaven and Prairie, that the complaints about the evergreens over the sidewalk, I think they've officially moved out now, so it's going to end up going on to the new owners. They moved to Fort Myers, Florida, and moving trucks were there over the weekend. So I don't think they're there anymore. So we're going to, it went a little too long before it got fixed, and they just left without fixing it. So.
All right. Well, when the new folks move in, we'll visit them.
Okay.
Other questions?
I had a phone call from a resident complaining about the property, Chesterbrook Academy. It seems to be a topic of conversation all the time. So just curious if the village has reached out to the property owner and if there's a maintenance plan in place.
Well, actually, I would say they have no maintenance plan in place since we've been cutting the property this season. They've not responded to mowing orders, so we've resorted to taking matters in our own hands and billing them and leaning the property, as the case may be.
But as far as weeds go, I can't imagine we have the time or the manpower to go pick weeds out of all those beds. Do we just let them?
We have a landscaper that does our property maintenance mowing. We've asked him to weed the property, but he, like everybody else, is swamped right now, and it's on his list.
Okay.
If I can just add, so what happens typically is if there's a violation, the village gives, cites or gives notice to the property owner, gives them a period of time to remedy it themselves. And if they don't, then the village uses a contractual service to come, mow or pull weeds or address whatever it is. And then, when we get that invoice, we do pay it, but then we bill the property owner and there is an administrative fee on top of it. And if they don't pay the invoice, then we do file a lien. So, if they ever go to sell the property, the liens are going to have to be paid off. And we've done that, like most communities for years and years. And, with the rare exception, in the long run, it all works out. And, one of the concerns that has come up in the past is, well, gee, if the village is just going to take care of it, sounds great. Well, yeah, the property owner may get away with it for a period of time, but sooner or later the bill does come due. And, with the fees that are associated with it, it's not a cost efficient method to handle landscaping. So, and I think, Walter, on that particular one, we had primarily just been mowing it, but you recently put in the request to get into the planting beds and that because the weeds had become so excessive. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
We're getting proficient lips.
Okay. Other questions for staff? Okay. Trustee reports. Rick?
The Convention Bureau meeting has been canceled for July due to, I guess, other obligations and lack of business to attend, so I won't be doing that next week. I would like to make one other comment that did not come up with the Prairie Street thing, and when the gentleman said something about their deliveries coming in from the east. I'm not sure if anyone on the board remembers or is aware of it, but with the Settlers Ridge plan and our long-range plan, I remember it because it's right behind my house, but when Settlers Ridge completed the side of the tracks are on the north side, they were supposed to come to the south side, start building from Gordon all the way down to the back of our property here in Mallard Point, and slated right behind my house, which is right across the street from this guy's driveway to get up there with the semis, and that was a grade school. So if that's still going to go forward and they're still looking at putting a school there when things do develop someday in the future, that's something to consider too. And that was not discussed as part of the topic. Whether that'll still be in our plans as things progress, whether any of us will still be here when that gets developed, I don't know. But it is something to keep in the back of your heads.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Ryan? Okay, Ryan?
Hello. Just so you guys know, I sent some messages. I don't have any reports other than my Wi-Fi at home and then the hotspot through my phone I've been getting constantly kicked off. So I've been called in the last half hour, 40 minutes, but I don't have any comments, so sorry about that.
Okay. Sean Heron?
I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Ted?
I'd like to respond to Rick's comment that, no, none of us will be here by the time that happens. So that's all.
John, any comments?
No. Thank you. I have nothing.
Okay. Heidi?
No, I don't have anything.
Tony or Brad, any updates on the street program? We're pretty much done in the village, except you sent out an email today saying the restoration was not done to our satisfaction, so we're going to address that more in the fall. But anything else going on as far as the streets program?
No, they were very near completion. The last part, they were doing some crack filling on Dugan Road. So they may have finished that today. I don't know 100% for sure, but they're very close, other than a couple punch list items and, of course, the landscaping that is challenged.
Okay. Well, driving throughout the village and looking at the different road projects, it really seemed to go well. In Stratford Woods and Mallard Point, the crack filling in the various neighborhoods and micro surfacing. So it's nice to see the commitment back to the residents by getting the roads improved. And hopefully we'll see some new building permits come in where people want to remodel their house now. It seems to be a good leader to get neighborhood investments made. So good. Congratulations on getting that done, everyone. Now, if we could just get Route 47 done, but that's Michelle or Tony, any update on Bliston 47 project?
It appears a little bit slow right now, but actually the traffic signal contractor has been working. They poured the concrete for the bases for all the traffic signal poles that have to go up. So there's a lot of work that goes in. Those are quite large. Today, the left turn lanes were closed because they're installing some vaults and structures that are going to be in the pavement there. So the traffic signal contractor is the guy working right now. And then hopefully shortly after they get their underground part done and move along, then the actual pavement contractor will come back and get that finished up.
What about the pedestrian path? Is that I haven't seen much work done on either side of that. Is that being done?
There's actually still some utility conflicts for the pedestrian path at Capitol and Bliss. So since it's separate equipment than street paving equipment, it doesn't make sense for the contractor to move in and then not be able to finish. So they're holding off on that right now.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Any final public comment? Going once. Any final public comment? I'm sorry.
Hey, Sean. Yeah, Sean, this is Jim Eckert. Hey, for Tony, as part of that punch list is across the street from Mallard Point Park. Is that on there for landscaping? Because there's some open trenches. One's by a handicap ramp. Is that on the punch list?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other public comments? Okay. Close that portion. I had no notice of a need to go to closed session. Is that still the case?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then may I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second by Trustee Cook. Roll call, please, Allison.
All right. Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lundy?
Aye.
And Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Okay, we're getting like old school where we must be getting used to these virtual meetings. It's almost taken the normal time. So, thank you all for participating. Have a good evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night.
Good night.
All righty. Good night.